Taking the oath of office, South Korea's new president, Lee Jae-myung, put integration and pragmatism front and center during his inaugural speech. As a reflection of his policy priority, the new leader instructs the launch of an emergency task force as his first executive order. Also on his first day as president, Lee filled some of the key posts of his administration. Lawmaker Kim Min-seok was named Prime Minister nominee, and former Unification Minister Lee Jong-seok National Intelligence Service Director. It's June 4th, 8 p.m. in Seoul. This is Newscenter. Thank you for joining us. I'm Yoon Jung-min. We begin our coverage with the start of a new government here in Korea. Taking the oath of office in a red, white, and blue tie, President Lee Jae-myung pledged to become a leader for all, regardless of their political inclinations. Other key messages centered on kickstarting an economic task force, as he vows to take pragmatic approaches when it comes to diplomacy. Our correspondent Shin Ha-young reports.
나는 헌법을 준수하고 국가를 보위하며 조국의 평화적 통일과 국민의 자유와 복리의 증진 및 민족 문화의 창달에 노력하여 대통령으로서의 직책을 성실히 수행할 것을 국민 앞에 엄숙히 선서합니다.
President Lee Jae-myung took the oath at the National Assembly in a scaled-down inauguration on Wednesday, keeping the ceremony brief and focused as he started his term without a transition committee. In his inaugural speech, he emphasized national unity, which he has highlighted throughout his campaign, saying he will embrace everyone and be a president for all.
이제 출범하는 민주당 정권 이재명 정부는 정의로운 통합정부, 유연한 실용정부가 될 것입니다. 분열의 정치를 끝낸 대통령이 되겠습니다.
During the inauguration, he caught attention by wearing a red, white, and blue tie, symbolizing his message of unity across political affiliation. He pointed to reviving the domestic economy as one of the top priorities of his administration.
민생 회복과 경제 살리기부터 시작하겠습니다. 불황과 일전을 치른다는 각오로 비상경제 대응 TF를 곧바로 지금 즉시 가동하겠습니다.
Regarding his diplomatic policy, he emphasized pragmatic, national interest-focused diplomacy to turn the global economic and security challenges into opportunities that maximize national benefits.
굳건한 한미 동맹을 토대로 한미일 협력을 다지고 주변 국가의 관계도 국익과 실용의 관점에서 접근하겠습니다.
He also pledged to boost the nation's culture industries, stressing that culture is economic as well as global competitiveness.
대한민국의 문화산업을 더 크게 키우겠습니다. 적극적인 문화예술 지원으로 콘텐츠의 세계 표준을 다시 쓸 문화 강국, 글로벌 소프트 파워 5대 강국으로 도약할 것입니다.
After the inauguration, he had lunch at the National Assembly with Speaker Woo Won-sik and leaders from both the ruling and opposition parties, demonstrating his commitment to national unity from the very first day of his term. There, he expressed his hope that by making necessary concessions and compromises, policies that everyone agrees on can be created to help people live better lives.
Crowds gathered to witness history as Lee Jae-myung took office after winning the snap presidential election with 49.42% of the vote. And having consistently emphasized national unity, all eyes are now on how he will turn those words into action. Shin Ha-young, Arirang News.
The new leader began his work at the presidential office in Yongsan for now, tapping some of the key posts of his administration, including a new prime minister nominee. Our correspondent Oh Soo-young tells us more.
Day one of the Lee Jae-myung administration began at the break of dawn, with the new South Korean leader's duties beginning upon the National Election Commission's confirmation of his presidency. As he stepped out for his first commute from his home in Gaeanggo district, Incheon, Lee and First Lady Kim Hae-kyung spent about 10 minutes shaking hands with supporters and expressing their gratitude. As per tradition for all newly elected leaders, President Lee made a visit to the Seoul National Cemetery to honor the nation's war dead and heroes before heading to the National Assembly for his inauguration ceremony. Despite his push to move the presidential office back to the palatial grounds of Cheongwade, undoing his predecessor's relocation to the city centre, Lee launched his administration in Yongsan. Awaiting his arrival, the flag bearing the presidential phoenix was once again raised as of early Wednesday. Staying true to his pledge to begin his duties straight away, the president personally announced his key appointments.
존경하는 국민 여러분, 지금 우리는 경제와 민생 회복 그리고 지속 가능한 성장의 토대를 다시 세워야 할 시점입니다. 저는 오늘 국민에 대한 충직함과 책임 그리고 실력을 갖춘 인사들과 함께 국민 주권 정부의 새 출발을 시작합니다.
In a briefing to reporters, he named four-time lawmaker Kim Min-seok as Prime Minister nominee and as National Intelligence Service Director, former Unification Minister Lee Jong-seok, who's an experienced negotiator and policy expert in inter-Korean relations. These two positions require parliamentary approval. However, senior aides working directly with the president assumed their positions right away, without a separate vetting process. He appointed as his chief presidential secretary lawmaker Kang Won-sik, one of the key strategists behind his election campaigns. Former ambassador to Russia Wi Song-lak now heads the National Security Office as National Security Advisor. Former Army General Hwang In-kwon leads the Presidential Security Service, tasked with protecting the president and his family. Professor-turned-politician Kang Yoo-jung has become the presidential spokesperson. As for future ministerial appointments, President Lee said he would like to take his time to gather opinions from the public, the ruling and opposition parties and members of the media. He further said restructuring the presidential office won't happen today or tomorrow, as his administration will focus first on emergency measures for economic recovery. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
Also on his first day in office, South Korea's new commander-in-chief spoke with the country's head of the JCS to ensure the nation's security. Later, he is expected to hold his first phone conversation with his American counterpart, Donald Trump. Our foreign affairs correspondent, Bae Eun-ji, has more.
South Korea's new leader, Lee Jae-myung, is expected to hold a phone call with U.S. President Donald Trump as early as Wednesday night, on day one of his presidency. While the call will likely be focused on congratulating Lee on his inauguration, there is a possibility that they'll discuss bilateral issues, such as tariffs and North Korea's nuclear threats. Addressing concerns on North Korea, President Lee, on his first day in office, called the country's head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and ordered him to ensure the nation's security remains strong.
특히 지금 상황이 매우 유동적이기 때문에 말씀하신 것처럼 한미연합 방위 태세를 근간으로 해서 북한군 동향도 잘 파악해 보시고 빈틈없이 대비 태세를 잘 유지해 주시길 바랍니다.
Later in the day, he visited the JCS, looked around the military's operations control room, and was briefed on the country's defense readiness. Lee, who has earlier pledged to open communication channels with North Korea, will likely seek ways to build peace on the Korean peninsula throughout his term. Meanwhile, the U.S. State Department on Tuesday local time congratulated Lee on his election win, noting that the two countries share a strong commitment to their alliance. It also said Washington will continue to deepen trilateral cooperation with Japan. According to Reuters, the White House reacted by saying that although South Korea's election was free and fair, it said it remains concerned about Chinese interference in democracies around the world. Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba also congratulated Lee and said he seeks to hold a summit with him as soon as possible, explaining that the two countries face similar challenges, such as an aging population and declining birth rates. Separately, China's Xinhua State News Agency says Xi Jinping also sent a congratulatory message to the new South Korean president. Xi specifically pointed out that he highly values the development of relations between Seoul and Beijing. China's foreign ministry also told reporters in a press briefing that the country plans to deepen its partnership with the new South Korean government. With the tariffs, potential reduction of U.S. troops, and global uncertainties remaining as key challenges for the new government, eyes are on how the administration will navigate relations with other countries to overcome them. 배은지, Arirang News.
The new president's first executive order was launching an emergency task force to address urgent economic challenges and improve the daily lives of the people. Our economics correspondent Lee Soo-jin takes a closer look.
South Korea's newly elected president Lee Jae-myung is swiftly moving to deliver on a key campaign pledge, revival of the economy. His spokesperson announced on Wednesday that President Lee had signed his first executive order.
On June 4, 2025, his first day in office, President Lee Jae-myung signed his first executive order, calling for the establishment of an emergency economic task force.
This comes as growth projections for South Korea's economy have been revised downward by both domestic and foreign institutions. The Bank of Korea just last week slashed its GDP growth forecast for this year to 0.8% from 1.5% in its economic outlook report. And the OECD on Tuesday lowered South Korea's 2025 growth forecast to 1%, down 0.5 percentage points from its earlier projection. While it is yet unclear who will take on the dual role of finance and deputy prime minister, the appointee is expected to lead the task force in overseeing pressing economic issues. This includes overseeing a planned economic supplementary budget amounting to 30 trillion won or $22 billion to boost domestic demand. But as the ruling Democratic Party is expected to maintain a majority in the National Assembly for the next 3 years until the 2028 general election, the new administration is likely to face fewer hurdles in carrying out its policy agenda. The new administration will also have to navigate high-stakes negotiations with the Trump administration. Korea and the U.S. held high-level trade talks in April where the two countries agreed to reach a comprehensive agreement dubbed the July Package by July 8th, the date that the 90-day pause on Trump's reciprocal tariff rates on foreign nations is set to expire. The Ministry of Economy and Finance is also expected to be restructured as Lee, since his candidacy, has pledged to transfer the Finance Ministry's budgeting role to a separate body. The ministry currently oversees both economic policy and budget allocation, but Lee argues this concentrates too much power in one place. The separation of the budgeting function is expected to allow other ministries to gain more autonomy and accountability over their spending, while allowing the finance ministry to focus more on coordinating overall economic policy. Lee Soo-jin, Arirang News.
For a closer look at the 21st presidential election and beyond, our political correspondent Kim Do-yeon joins us here in the studio. Do-yeon, Lee Jae-myung won the election this morning with some 49% of support. So what can you tell us about this figure?
Right, Jungmin. First, let's repeat the number. He received 49.4% of the votes. Now, let's put that into perspective. Since 1987, when direct presidential elections began, only one president has secured more than 50% of the vote, President Park Geun-hye, who still holds a record for the highest share. Had he crossed that 50% mark, it would have added even more momentum to his policy agenda, as it's quite a rare achievement. But as you can see, he still has a second highest percentage. That's why some voices inside the Democratic Party are calling a sobering message from the public to remain humble despite the strong support throughout the campaign. The message comes against a backdrop of earlier opinion polls and even exit polls, which suggested Lee might secure a majority, but he ultimately fell short. Now, two key numbers to highlight. First, he received more votes than any other president in Korean history, breaking the previous record set by former President Yoon. Lee secured 17.3 million votes. It was also the highest voter turnout since 1997. Another notable comparison is Lee's growth from the last presidential race. He received 47.83% in 2022, this time 49.4, roughly a 1.5 percentage point increase in terms of actual votes. 1.1 million more people voted for E compared to 3 years ago, as the turnout was higher.
Now, as our Lee Soo-jin mentioned in her report, the DP holds the majority in parliament. What does this mean for the new government?
Right. So DP can now push through bills as it sees fit. For context, during the past 3 years, under Yoon Suk-yeol administration, including acting presidents, 40 bills were vetoed, as many were passed unilaterally by the DP-controlled legislature. But now, with both the presidency and parliamentary majority, the DP holds full control. The only option left for the opposition People Power Party is to filibuster. Still, E has extended an olive branch, sitting down with leaders of all parties and promising cooperation earlier today.
자주 뵙기를 바라고 소통과 대화 또 일면 모든 걸 혼자 다 100% 취할 수 없기 때문에 양보할 건 양보하고 타협해서 가급적이면 모두가 함께 동의하는 그런 정책들로 우리 국민들이 더 나은 삶을 꾸리게 되기를 진심으로 소망합니다.
Of course, this is just the beginning, and PPP interim leader Kim Yong-tae has urged the president to acknowledge proportional representation and work together.
If the president and ruling party recognize proportional representation, a core value of democracy, and pursue cooperative politics, then the People Power Party will actively engage and cooperate where possible.
Another area to watch, the nomination of a new prime minister. Lee has named, as we heard, Kim Min-seok as his nominee. Under the previous administration, these confirmation hearings often became political flashpoints, with the opposition blocking or resisting cabinet picks. While ministers can be appointed even without opposition support, prime ministers require National Assembly approval. But now, with the DP's majority, even the prime minister nomination is expected to move smoothly, and ministerial confirmation hearings will likely be much shorter.
Now, let's shift to the People Power Party. I hear the party is going through the aftermath of its defeat.
That's right. I mean, the election itself was triggered by the party's own president being impeached. Let's first listen to what the PPP candidate Kim Moon-soo had to say about the party's failure today.
First and foremost, I believe our party lacks a fundamental understanding and commitment to the principles of democracy, the determination to uphold those principles. That is what led to the unimaginable act of declaring martial law.
This was Kim's strongest criticism yet over the martial law declaration, the very issue at the heart of the party's need for so-called renewal to move forward. Broadly, the party remains divided between two factions, those who supported Yoon's impeachment and those who remain loyal to him. And with the election outcome, as Kim pointed out, the people have spoken. The martial law declaration was wrong. The party now faces the challenge of reshaping itself accordingly.
Our political correspondent, Kim Do-yeon, thank you.
Thank you.
Up next, our Park Go-nu explains who Lee Jae-myung is and his journey from the factory floor to the nation's highest office.
저희가 흑수저도 아니고 무수저 출신 집안이라 여러분들이 보시는 것처럼 우리 가족들 사이에 아픔이 많습니다.
Even its biggest critics won't be able to deny that Lee Jae-myung, the newly elected president of South Korea, is self-made. Lee, who is 61 years old, was born in Andong as the fifth of 7 children. Facing severe financial hardship, he inflated his age to work in factories and suffered from industrial accidents, one leaving his arm permanently disabled and exempting him from military service. Despite this, he studied on his own to pass middle and high school equivalency exams, later earning a college scholarship. The year he graduated, he also passed South Korea's notoriously difficult bar exam, setting him on the path to becoming a human rights lawyer. And his background as an underage laborer and human rights lawyer heavily influenced his political career, which began as the city of Seongnam's mayor in 2010 and drove his focus on policies addressing social conflict and equality.
Lee Jae-myung identified polarization and significant disparity is the root cause of the social conflicts. So he suggests artificial intelligence and maybe renewable energy and cultural content industry. He suggests to maintain our growth, to reduce our social division.
After gaining attention for his bold progressive policies as mayor, he went on to become the governor of Gyeonggi-do Province, which expanded his political base and helped launch his presidential runs. Although he narrowly lost to former President Yoon Suk-yeol by just 0.73 percentage points in 2022, one of the tightest races in Korean history, Yoon's failed attempt to invoke martial law later paved the way for Lee's ultimately successful bid this year. But while his rags to riches story inspired many, the nation's deep political divide was laid bare when he was stabbed by an assailant posing as a supporter last year. With polarization remaining a pressing issue, Lee's emphasis on the importance of unity throughout the campaign signals that national cohesion will be a key theme of his presidency.
우리 사회의 지금 가장 큰 과제 중에 하나가 사회 통합이라고 보여집니다. 그렇게 해야 민생도 회복하고 또 경제도 회복하고 또 모두가 기회와 성과를 함께 누리면서 희망을 가지고 살아가는 정상적인 민주국가, 민주공화국이 될 수 있는 것입니다.
박건우, 아리랑 뉴스.
The local bourse rallied on Wednesday, bolstered by foreign investors and institutions, as Korea welcomed a new president. The benchmark Kospi hit a fresh high to close trade today at over 2770, soaring more than 2% from its previous session. This is the first time in some 10 months that the index has closed above the 2,770 mark. The tech-heavy Kosdaq also gained more than 1% to end at over 750. In other news, in an official declaration, U.S. President Donald Trump confirmed the imposition of revised tariffs, doubling taxes on steel and aluminum to 50% starting Wednesday. Lee Jae-myung has the latest.
The White House says U.S. President Donald Trump signed a proclamation on Tuesday to double Washington's tariffs on imports of steel and aluminum to 50%. Prior to the signing, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt confirmed the tariff hike to reporters.
The president will be signing that executive order today, and steel and aluminum tariffs will be going to 50%, yes.
The hike comes as Trump said that the increased tariffs will be more effective in countering foreign countries that offload low-price access metals into the U.S. market. The 50% tariffs on imports of steel and aluminum took effect at 12:01 a.m. on Wednesday. According to Trump's proclamation, the previous 25% tariffs have helped provide critical price support in the United States market. However, he added that they have not yet enabled these industries to develop and maintain the rates of capacity production utilization that are necessary for the industry's sustained health and for projected national defense needs. He also said he's determined that increasing the previously imposed tariffs will provide greater support to these industries and reduce or eliminate the national security threat posed by imports of steel and aluminum articles and their derivative articles. Meanwhile, the White House also said that Washington has sent a letter to all of its trading partners to remind them of the trade negotiation deadline.
USTR sent this letter to all of our trading partners just to give them a friendly reminder that the deadline is coming up, and they are in talks.
The 90-day pause on the reciprocal tariffs is set to end on July 8th, with Trump optimistic that Washington is on track for positive outcomes from ongoing negotiations. Lee Jae-myung, Arirang News.
Korea Aerospace Industries has signed a $700 million deal to provide an additional 12 fighter jets to the Philippines. According to the KAI, it struck a deal on Tuesday to provide the country with 12 more FA-50s through 2030. The country previously purchased 12 FA-50 jets in March 2014, and the customized version is currently considered a core asset of the Philippines Air Force. The latest FA-50 exports mark the first such deal in about 2 years since a contract signed in May 2023 to supply 18 planes to Malaysia. The weather was generally clear today, and it seemed like late spring at this time of year in many regions. Seoul rose up to 25 degrees Celsius during the day, and the center parts of the country had slightly lower temperatures than yesterday. However, the south was hotter than yesterday at nearly 30 degrees Celsius. The temperatures will rise higher tomorrow in most parts of the country. With clear skies, the UV rays will be high to very high levels from the morning tomorrow. They will then rise to very high levels all over the country between noon and 3 in the afternoon when the sun shines strongly. Make sure to protect yourself from UV rays. Tomorrow morning, Daejeon and Gyeongju will start off at 14 degrees, Jeju at 18 degrees. Daily highs will move up to 27 degrees in Seoul, 28 degrees in Chuncheon, Daejeon, and Gwangju. Temperatures will get hotter again next week. Please take good care of your health. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world. That is Newscenter for tonight. Thank you for watching. A panel session up next.